From the News Channel 5 Network, this is MorningLine with Nick Barris.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us on MorningLine. Nick Barris with you on this Wednesday. How are you? I hope you're doing well and, bracing for what might be some severe weather coming our way in connection with Hurricane Laura. Boy, I was anchoring the morning show and with Leland and Nikki D. And that hurricane right now, if you look at the images on the Gulf, I mean, it's filling up like a third of the entire Gulf, making its way to Louisiana and Texas, and then it's going to kind of shift when it gets on land, come our way with some wind and rain. But scary situation. We'll continue to monitor that, and you stay tuned here to the News Channel 5 Network. But we're going to talk this morning not about the weather, but about a variety of issues, law enforcement and otherwise. A lot of things happening right now in the news with our monthly visit with Davidson County Sheriff Darren Hall, who's here with me in studio. Good morning. It's always nice to see you, Sheriff. I have a whole slate of guests that come on every week, and I've been doing this for years, going back with Larry Britton. But some guests I enjoy more than others. I like them all, almost all. But I always see sheriffs coming on. I always look forward to that. I really do.
Wow. Well,
it's nice.
Well, I look forward to it as well.
No, you don't. You're saying that, returning the favor. It's kind of like Carla. There she is with her mask, social separating. She's like, Sheriff, you got to go to MorningLine with Nick. And you're like, again?
Well, to be honest, I ask, how do we do it this month? Are we on, just for my own sake? And my mother loves it too.
Okay,
so she finds out a lot about what's going on by watching the show. So.
I appreciate. Well, I know. I thank you to your mother, and I know Carla's always got my back. Okay, so
that's right.
She's got my back. So a lot to talk about. We're going to take phone calls, and I guarantee you, Joe's going to be on the horn here just in a moment, one of our regular callers. But a couple points just to talk to. Get some of your observations as, technically speaking, with the top law enforcement officer in this county, along with the police chief, and we now know that Police Chief Anderson retired sooner than we thought he would, and he's gone now, and the process now to find a replacement. And as you look at this, first of all, let's be real clear, you have absolutely no interest in that job, and that's not something that you're considering in any way. But we're going to be looking in-house as well as a nationwide search, right? And just your thoughts on what they should be looking for in this next chief.
Yeah, I think it's clear that they're going to look nationally and locally, and I think that's a good, responsible thing to do. I am a little concerned about, just watching from the outside, that everyone who wants the 2 cents about what the chief should be and could be. I mean, to be honest with you, if you continue to add that to the list, you're never going to select a chief, and clearly you're not going to have everyone satisfied anyway. Like it or not, you elect a mayor. That mayor's job is to make appropriate selections, decisions, and we should and could hold that person accountable for making the right decision. I think it's wrong to elect a mayor, and in our charter, that's who picks the police chief, and then in turn, every activist organization in Nashville wants to be a seat at the table. I know that sounds politically correct, and everybody, the inclusion and all that, but the reality is, at some point, you have to make some decisions, and I think the broader that you make the conversation, the more difficult it's going to be, to get it done. And so, whereas if you're not satisfied, then we should hold that person accountable for making the wrong selection, if that's right. I don't think you do that while being a part of the process. So, a little concerned about that. Just from where I sit, I was talking to someone last couple of days, and they were asking me, about it, and I said, I'm hopeful we pick the right person. I think we will. The process is getting very convoluted. I mean, I've been through, I think I add this up, this is my 6th police chief.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Wow.
So I was thinking through all that, and the way they've been selected is varied, and so I just, I do not believe including everybody ensures you're going to get the right person, and I think it sounds kind of strange. People would come on here and say, yes, let's be all inclusive. I get that. It's very politically correct to do it, but the way our charter is set up, the mayor of Nashville is selecting the person, and he should have some input. Don't get me wrong, but I'm a little concerned that what we're trying to do is please everybody with being a part of the process, and I promise you, whoever you select is not going to please everybody. So,
yeah.
It's in the works. The other thing is we need to get a chief. I do not like the idea personally of putting an interim title around someone who is up for the job. I mean, that is a hard place to be. Quite frankly, I don't even think it's a good thing.
Isn't that what happened with Steve Anderson, basically? I was just going back, by the way, when you said how many chiefs. I can remember Chief Kirshner, right? And then after Kirshner, was it
Turner,
Emmett Turner, and then
Faulkner.
And who?
Faulkner.
Did Faulkner become chief for a brief period?
So here's the interesting thing. Faulkner is in the exact same situation that Drake is in. She was placed in the interim title wanting the job.
Yeah.
And that hardly ever works, by the way, because during the interim stage, all of your enemies really show up, and every crisis is exacerbated because you are interviewing for the job.
I forgot about Faulkner briefly.
Yeah, and it's very similar to where we are today. She was placed in that job, wanting the job. In her interim status, she wasn't successful. Then we interviewed and selected Surpass.
Yep.
Then Surpass to Anderson. And
now with Anderson, I guess, I mean, he too was interim. At the time when he was made interim initially, I don't know, you probably recall this, the sentiment was that he didn't want it. He said, yeah, I'll fill in, but I don't want it. And then after a period of time, I think he changed his mind. Maybe he always wanted to, but initially I remember him saying, I'm not sure I want this job. And then, of course, Mayor Dean ended up making it permanent, right? So it did work out in that regard for him.
Yeah, but I would even argue that probably because of the way he did that is the reason he ended up in the job. Number one, he said, I don't want it, and so I'm just here serving until you find the right person. That's different than saying I want the job, because when you do that, everybody's evaluating every decision you make. I mean, I've watched Chief Drake in the last several weeks. There's a lot of pressure on him to make right decisions, wrong decisions, and you know this, everyone's not going to be happy. And when you're interviewing for a job, you're the only one who has that hot seat. Every other candidate sitting out there in Richmond, Virginia, or wherever they're interviewing from. And so it's going to be, that's very difficult. And I think, Chief Drake, I'm sure, wanted to serve and did do the right thing. But when you back up a little bit, it's kind of like sending the backup quarterback in who's trying to get the job when every lineman may not be healthy, and everything going against your team is what he's evaluated on versus summer camp when you're throwing and catching the ball and your stats look pretty good.
You almost wonder if it forced his hand a bit, because we both know that Chief Anderson left sooner than they thought. They thought he would maybe stick around until they found the replacement. And I don't know, I'm just curious. I mean, obviously you're familiar and we're on speaking terms with him. I don't know how close you two were, but I mean, had you talked to him at all since he made that decision to leave?
Let's see, definitely,
maybe called him and said, hey, see you later?
In some text. We're going to lunch here real soon. We did that anyway, and so we made a commitment to continue doing it. And after the initial that he was resigning, I think it's fair to say we had some conversations that even the length of time that between when he made the initial and say an October time frame seemed way too long, and I think that was even his own feelings maybe. So I don't think he was totally shocked or totally disappointed to leave earlier than originally decided. But again, one of the difficulties is I think that puts the John Drake in a little different situation. Right. Had he been watching Chief Anderson be the chief while he was interviewing, a little more apples to apples. Whereas now we're putting him in the spot, and some would argue at least you have something to evaluate him over. But he doesn't have the full title and the full responsibilities and the flexibility to do everything he wants. So
yeah, it's curious to me how all that works. And as far as John Drake, I wonder. We've seen in the past, at least I look at the director of schools here in Metro, and frankly, I believe we've had some disasters when we just insisted on going outside and bringing someone in. I've seen police chief situations, most recently a specific one in the city of Murfreesboro. A police chief they brought in a while back, and that turned out to be a disaster, but they had to go outside and look. I understand going out and looking if the department, when the chief leaves, is just in complete and total disarray. I know things aren't perfect in Metro, but you look at director of schools now, and who we have in place who was in-house instead of going out. And I think she's done a terrific job to this point under really difficult circumstances. And she was there all along. I wonder, the attitude when you go on these searches, it's not, yeah, go ahead and open up. I'm interested in the best candidate. But so often I think, the best one may already be in-house and knows how things are running, as long as, maybe they weren't attached to some type of corrupt regime, I mean, I'm inclined to give the benefit of the doubt more likely to someone who's in-house than going and doing a nationwide search and bringing in an outsider, though many times those work out fine as well.
Yeah, I mean, think about it for a second. You would hardly ever get elected to a job from the outside.
That's true.
And the truth is, what people are arguing is that they want some oversight and they want, access, transparency, all these things. And so I think you're much more likely to feel that pressure if you're local. And I think it's important. I want to believe that the chief of police is invested in our community and lives here, and I'm in favor of whoever that candidate is, as long as you don't set them up to fail. For example, if you're asking to, quote, defund the police, God forbid, then, and I'm talking about dismantle the police department, you're not hiring the right person by hiring a person who is there now. But I've heard John Drake and other folks, he is aware of the pulse of what's going on. I personally believe the internal candidate is the one you should look to, and you should remove first before you even waste the energy of the entire country to decide. And we've selected Surpass years ago. Some would argue that was a disaster too. There was issues that and I'm talking more about imploding of the police department, issues internally and then all of a sudden he walked away in the middle of the flood, which we were left kind of, and that was the Steve Anderson deal. And so I think the truth is the investment in the community and the investment in what the police department are doing. I want to believe the person goes to church here and goes to the mall here and lives here and kids are here, and because I think that's important as to how you police the city and how you support what else is going on in our community. And selfishly, I grew up here. I'm proud of Nashville. I don't believe that any other city grows police chiefs better than we do. But I think the reality is you have to decide, what do you want in a police chief? Because if you're going to ask it to come in here and dismantle everything that this man or other people would have learned, that's unfair to him. You're setting him up to fail. And I've heard him say there's a lot of reform and things he wants to do if he is the police chief. And for that matter, I hope he gets a chance to do that. Yeah.
Listen, I'll tell you, we're going to go to a break. We'll come back. We have calls, but you, my friend, have got the good gig. I'll tell you right now, and I know a lot of people, because they care about their community and they're going, I don't know why you'd want to be a police chief right now in this environment, in this country. I really, honestly don't. We're going to talk a little bit about that when we come back as well. The pressures and everything that's coming with it, and most recently what happened in Wisconsin. I mean, it is a mess, and there are going to have to be some changes and a lot of pressure on police chiefs, a little bit different in the capacity that you're in the Sheriff's Department here. We'll take a break and be back with some phone calls and more with Davidson County Sheriff Darren Hall right after this.